I'm excited
Thank you so much, David.
to be having some more conversation. I thought the first one went so well. We were exchanging some emails afterwards, and we're like, "Hey, man, we
Yeah,
got to do that again." So, last time we talked a lot about, um, I guess, kind of the building the trust, starting
yeah,
the process. How do you get in the door with the customer?
yeah,
And I thought the customer engagement flywheel that I talk about in your orbit and how you start to bring that customer in and build trust were
yeah,
great. Were great, very complimentary. And then as we were talking about it, we covered a lot of, okay, how do you get in the door?
yeah,
And so I titled this live, okay, I won the work, now what? And so
yeah,
I thought, okay, we won the work, now what? And maybe I'll kind of kick us off here, and then I would love some thoughts from you. So,
absolutely.
in my mind, that leads into what I call my second driver, which is the improvement driver. And
Yeah,
so the whole point behind that is how do I continue to make my customer better? So we won the work because we're going to help them solve a problem. How am I helping them see that we're solving the problem? I think so often folks forget that, hey, your customer has a lot of other stuff on their plate. They're trying to run a business. It's not that they're, not interested in solving this problem with you. Obviously they are,
yeah,
but they probably aren't thinking about, hey, are we through the first checkpoint? Are we through the first milestone? So for me, I think once you're in the door with the customer, setting up that cadence with
yes,
them that says, hey, we're going to meet weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever that is.
yeah,
We're going to cover, what has improved, and I'm going to help you see the value that I'm bringing. To me, that's a great way to, especially on that first project, to really build the trust, right? And start to pull them
absolutely.
closer as we kind of go back to that orbit. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, once you're kind of in the door with customers, how are you helping sales teams like, hey, now let's build some trust with them. Let's continue on this process. So like I've won the work now. What are we doing after that, right?
Absolutely. And I'll share what we do at Systematic Selling as a company. And then
Okay.
what we
Love it.
often, we're client zero. So then we share that
Yeah.
knowledge with our clients. But taking that foundational principle, you talked about the orbit, and then we talk about the trust continuum of 0 to 10. 0, I don't know you, I don't trust you, to 10. These are the folks who will beg to buy whatever you're willing to sell them. And in that span, when they say, hey, yes, let's move forward, they're probably about a 6 on that trust continuum. And then what you do after should be designed to build so much trust that you're nudging them from a 6 to a 7 to a 7 to an 8 and so forth until you
Yeah.
have that 10 trust level relationship. So, on a practical basis, one of the things that we learned to do, so we do a sales accelerator program. It's a 6-month program for new franchisees, new owners of franchise brands. And the franchise
Oh,
brands bring us in to help these new owners ramp up their sales quickly without
yeah.
the guesswork, without them trying to figure out what their
Yeah.
process should be. So, one of the things that we instilled in our process are a couple of things. So, we've instilled, as we're working with the franchise brand, we instilled a pre-kickoff huddle so
Okay.
that we can talk about, okay, we've got we've got a kickoff coming up in, say, 3 days or a week. Let's talk through the logistics, make sure everything is as smooth as possible so we deliver an amazing experience for these new
Yeah.
owners. That was an adjustment that we made within the past year to help make that process, the kickoff process, smooth. A second thing that we did is we instituted and scheduled up front that after the third session of that 6-week program, we
Yeah.
instilled a halftime huddle. It's a
Okay.
debrief and planning.
Yeah.
So, and this would be with the brand representatives and not the owners, because we're the ones as a team delivering this training. And in that time, we're looking at, okay, what are areas specific to this cohort, but also moving forward that we can make adjustments. A
Yeah.
The ethos of our company is what we call relentless excellence. We never arrive.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
always improving. So that is the frame that I set up these debrief and planning meetings, because a lot of times the client's like, oh man, we're getting great feedback. We love this and everything else. Awesome. I love getting good feedback.
Right.
What I want to do here is talk about what can we do to take this to the next level. So
Yeah.
we instill that as part of our overall system. And then we do a post cohort debrief and planning as well. Okay, we've completed this. Again,
Consistent.
going through what are ways that we can find opportunities to take this to the next level. Now, what we have just recently started doing is surveying cohort participants at the front,
Okay.
middle, end, and then 6 months from now, so
Okay.
that we can see their progression when it comes to
Yeah.
confidence level and sales and so forth. And I've also encouraged my franchise brands to start thinking about how we can measure performance of
The,
each cohort. Like a simple measure would be average revenue across the
yeah.
cohort, and see how quickly, based on the baseline prior to us coming, what that
Are they?
difference is. What is that level of improvement? So we have, whereas before it would be one of those things where you're trying to figure it out after you've
Yeah.
won the deal, we
Yeah.
make it part of the deal, because unless, when we're as sales reps, unless we are delivering value, they may pay us now, but if they
Yeah.
are not seeing value over time, we're expendable. So we got to
Yeah.
make ourselves indispensable. One of the ways of doing that is finding the measures, communicating along the way,
Yeah.
and then living up to those measures, making the adjustments
Yeah.
together in order to achieve a successful outcome.
No, and I really love that. As you talk about kind of that process through the sales, and I see we have a question about what types of businesses, and so
Yeah.
it's leading me to a question, but to kind of double click on that a little bit more. So I work in the energy services space, so we
Yep.
install large equipment. It's 200K to buy a system, right? And then we
Yep.
send a technician out that helps install that.
Yep.
And so, for us, and customers are producing hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars through this equipment. And so it's a big deal. And one of the most successful reps that we've had does a very similar process, right? And
Mhm.
so, and this is one of the things I want to get into, but like, so we had a new customer. They were kind of a startup. They did their first couple of installs with them,
Yeah.
and then he scheduled a meeting and went back with them and said, okay, hey, what went well, what didn't go well.
Yep.
This part, like there were some items where we could have provided the service or the
Yep.
product and they got a cheaper price, and so they went with a third party. Well, then we had a bunch of problems. So then in the follow-up meeting, by scheduling that follow-up meeting,
Yeah.
we now have all that work because the rep was able to say, hey, look, guys, yeah, we may have been a little bit more expensive, but just to be honest, like we would have had this covered. We would have the communication would have been a lot smoother,
Yes.
right? Like you didn't actually save any money. And so I
Yep.
think one of the beautiful things, like, and I loved your kind of before, middle, and after
Yeah.
checkpoints of,
Yep.
hey, how are we doing?
Yep.
Okay, now that we've started this project, are we making you better? Right. And that's one of the reasons I like to call it the improvement driver, is because
Yeah.
I'm trying to improve my customer. So
Right.
if I'm really going to add momentum at this step, how am I helping them see the improvement, right? And some
Yeah.
projects, you have to get the project done for sure. I can understand that, right?
Yeah.
But other projects, you can check in along the way, just like you were talking about with your cohort. And the question I was thinking of, that kind of to this point about what types of business, as you think about, what you guys do with the cohorts and how you ask that, and you're
Yeah.
working with franchises. So I'm assuming those franchises are probably in very different businesses, right? As far as like services, but maybe different kinds of services. I'm curious if you see any difference in how people approach this. Okay, I've won the work. How do I go get this customer to continue to build trust with me?
The So in the franchises that I work with, they tend to be in either the home or commercial services or both.
Okay.
where what we're talking about is very appropriate for commercial B2B
Yeah,
services where
for
you
sure.
have these longer cycle projects and there is that repeat work type of
Yep.
thing. Whereas a lot of times in residential home services, it a lot of times it's that one off. You're taking
Yeah.
care of a specific problem. You're fixing a leak, you're doing the gutter cleaning, the pressure washing, things like
Yep.
that. You're fixing a specific problem, and then, you know, you may or may not do business with that homeowner down the road.
Yeah.
However, I'm a big proponent that no matter who the customer is, you still treat them like they
Yeah.
are a B2B customer. And I don't know if I shared this last time, but I've got this idea of the 4 farmland matrix, and the concept there is that each account that you have is a piece of farmland that you cultivate for maximum yield.
Hmm.
And so many people overlook this idea that even if they are a homeowner where this is a one-off transaction, if you're staying in touch in some form or fashion, your
Yeah.
companies stay in touch in some form or fashion, that can lead to either additional work, referrals, and so forth. So even though there are differences in the dynamic, there are similarities on how you view the lifetime value of that
Yeah.
customer as a piece of farmland that can produce a yield.
You know, and just to kind of go a little bit deeper on that, right? I think with follow-ups or with this improvement process, like
Yep.
thinking of the farmland,
Yeah.
I do see a lot of people on the sales side of things that think driving by the farmland, whatever shape it's in,
Yep.
throwing some seeds out the window,
Yeah.
and then saying, "Why aren't they growing?" You know,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
and I get it. It's very easy, paid ads and a lot of that stuff works, right? It can be
Mhm.
part of your marketing. It can turn
Yep.
into sales and it can help you grow.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I see, people do so often is they throw those seeds out the window, they drive by, they come back a little while later and they're like, "Well, why didn't they grow?" And it's like,
Yeah.
well, first off, and from what I remember about the field, right? The fields are all in all different conditions, right? So like,
Yep.
was this field plowed? Did you
Yep.
have irrigation on the field,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
there is so much that goes to it, and I love the idea that you brought up of you want to stay in touch with these customers. I was working with an HVAC company here locally, and
Yep.
they do really great work on the residential side. And to your
Yeah.
point, that can be more transactional. They're trying to get more into the commercial space,
Yeah.
which is a lot more B2B. You've got
It
to
is.
work on like CapEx budgets, right? So like the facilities team will only have so much budget every
Yep.
year.
Yep.
Are they preparing for replacements of units when they need to? Are you
Yep.
helping them see those kinds of things? Like when you're doing maintenance, are you tagging, hey, this unit's 5, 10, 15 years old? I see that the maintenance cost is continuing to go up. When
Yep.
you're getting your budget approved, why don't you go ahead and try to be proactive and let's
Yes.
get this replaced, right? And so I think to me, that's part of that kind of getting in there with the customer and not trying to sell,
Yep.
right? Not throwing the seeds at them as you're driving by, but coming in saying, hey, this field needs to be plowed. Let's go plow it, right?
Yep.
I'll help you do that, right? Now let's plant some seeds. And,
Exactly.
I think that's one of those benefits, even in the transactional space, because, you go power wash somebody's driveway. They're not going to need that every year, but like
No.
maybe their neighbors do, right? Maybe they need it in 2 years.
Yep.
And if you stay in touch with them every 6 months or so, they
Exactly
feel
right.
seen and heard, right? And I think that's one of those things on the sales side where people can miss is like the follow up and like building that trust of just letting the customer know, hey, I'm thinking about you. I'm not
Yes.
asking you for a sale today,
Yep.
right? But I'm trying to continue to build this relationship and let you know that I'm here to help you, right?
Absolutely. A few points there. One of the things that, you talk about HVAC and, going from residential to commercial and the differences and the dynamics. And I would say any company like HVAC or any company that deals with equipment on the B2B side where machines do what I call machines machine, right?
Yeah.
They will eventually break down and tell you when they need to be
Yep.
replaced.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I advise my clients in those arenas is that your job is to protect your client's blind side.
Mhm.
Typically,
That's a
you're
great
dealing
point.
with someone who's not the ultimate financial buyer. Like you're dealing with a property engineer, a property manager, and then there is an owner that they must answer to. So if a machine goes down prematurely, the owner's going to be like, "What's up? Why
Yeah.
did this happen?" So now that property manager has to explain themselves. And so if you are going to be a true partner to them, the key there is to protect their blind side and make recommendations. So what some of my clients do for their high value clients is they will put together a little budget spreadsheet. Here are the
Oh,
pieces of
nice.
equipment that we're seeing, and then
Yeah.
they'll color code it. Yellow, need to be taking a look at this
Yeah.
maybe in the next year or two. Red, this needs to be done ASAP, and with a budget range. So not a specific price, but you're going to be
Yeah.
looking at this to this as a way of equipping their customers to be able to make good decisions. And it helps you as the company and the sales rep to begin planning
Yeah.
with that customer. So
Yeah.
it serves as a sales tool, but ultimately it's serving the customer.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's a great way to build stakeholders and advocates within the company too. You know, if you
Yeah.
think about like just since we brought up HVAC, right, talking about that, like a lot of that decision probably falls on the facilities team, right?
Yep.
Depending on the
It does.
size of um the organization. But
Yeah.
then to your point, the facilities team has to go talk to the owner, right? And it's one of those things where like the facilities team may say, hey, we should really replace this, and the owner's like, oh, it's not in the budget.
Yep.
And then it breaks down and the owner's like, well, why don't we have AC? And you're like, well,
Yeah.
so to your point, like when you build the data behind it, right? And I do think
Yep.
that is a big part of it, to be able to say, hey, look, this unit here is 10 years old and you can see the costs continuing to increase, right? And I
Yes.
think that's one of those things where a lot of folks will just go out and do the work, make it better, which isn't bad, and then follow up with the customer. But
Yep.
when you build a system behind it too that says, hey, how many times have we been out here, right? Like
Yep.
I like you, Mr. Customer, but I don't want to see you every month, you know?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
let's get this thing fixed, you know, let's do it right. And then understanding who is that decision maker, who controls that, you know, when is their capex, like when is their budget cycle? You know, not everybody is a January to December, some of them are June to July.
Yeah.
And so if that's the case, I don't need to talk to you in November or December, right? I probably need to talk to you in like March, April, May, and
Yeah.
start saying, to your point, like, okay, here's, you know, it's going to be 20K, it's going to be 50K,
Yep.
right? To be prepared to replace this. Let's
Yeah.
go ahead and get that in your budget now, right? I've even heard of folks that were like, well, hey, this broke down and now I'll give you a 60-day term so I can get this invoice into your next budget cycle, you
Yeah.
know. And again, to your point, it's all about trying to serve that customer,
It is.
and understanding, you know, how do I make you better, um, and at the end of the day, trying to build some trust there, right?
Absolutely. It is everything goes back, whatever relationships you are in, personal relationships, marriage,
Yeah.
and sales, everything goes on that trust continuum. And when
Yeah.
it comes to managing those relationships, it's also understanding that the trust continuum is dynamic and not static. Meaning
Yeah.
if you're at an 8, you can just as easily bring it down to a 4 by not
Yeah.
following through. You got to be super vigilant. Now, one of the things that some of my high ticket commercial trades companies do is they will schedule annual review lunches with, say, their top 10 clients. Like they've got
Yeah.
a certain tier of clients that they will do
Yep.
that with. And so much business is generated from those lunches. And the
Yeah.
purpose of the lunch or the agenda within the lunch
Yeah.
is about 70% personal. You're
Yeah.
catching up with them.
Yeah.
You're getting to know them, and then it just inevitably slides into a business conversation. "Oh, by the way, here are some of the things that we're needing to get done."
Yeah.
And, "Hey,
Yeah.
wanna make sure how are things going? How are we doing? What areas do we need to take this up a notch?" And so forth. Those those meetings are invaluable to the clients
Yeah.
that execute them.
Yeah, and, I think about and there's kinda 2 types of meetings, right? Like, I think
Yeah.
there's the informal meetings,
Yep.
that are great, right? Whether that's a lunch
Yep.
or, happy hours or golf or any of the just general customer engagement
Yep.
ideas. And then the other thing is you can have a little bit more formal,
Absolutely.
meeting too. And I think that is an important thing to think about, both internally and externally.
Yeah.
And in fact, that company I was talking about, one of the things I was recommending to them, right, is hey, once a quarter, probably to start with, maybe even once a month, you should be looking at this internally for your customers and asking these kinds of questions, right? Do
Yeah.
we know when their capex budget is? Do we know
Yep.
who the stakeholders are? Um, are we setting up those engagements with them
Yep.
so that, to your point, we can have those informal discussions
Yep.
that just build a little bit of trust between the two companies, right? And give us the opportunity to say, okay, hey, like, what do you guys have coming up next year?
Yeah.
Like for us specifically, we look a lot at activity, right? So
Mhm.
how many wells is somebody drilling, those kinds of things. And
Yeah.
like if I know somebody's going to be super busy or super slow, I generally find that out in a more informal sense, right? We go to
Absolutely.
lunch with them, we chat about them. Like you said, 70% of the conversation, 80% of the conversation is what trip are you going on this summer?
Yeah.
And then the rest of it is, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to pick up an extra rig and we're going to be twice as busy next year. And so it's like,
Yeah.
okay, I should probably make sure that I have equipment and service ready for that, right?
Absolutely.
And then we have some customers that like it to be a lot more structured. So hey,
Yep.
we're going to schedule an hour, you
Yep.
come in, and there I think the big key is what are the KPIs they want to see,
Yeah.
and how do you help them, I guess, understand, hey, I understand your problems,
Yeah.
right? Here's what I've done to help you correct those.
Yeah.
And then open it up at the end. What problems what problems do you see, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of mentioned this with the cohorts, right?
Yeah.
Hey, what didn't work with us this year,
Yep.
right? Like
Yep.
I think I see it, but you tell me.
Yeah.
And we've actually had some customers that are like, oh, by the way, you know, this is happening. And we're like, what are you talking
Yeah.
about? Right.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't,
Absolutely.
without asking that question, we never would have got there. And so I think you do have to, especially from the sales perspective, right? To your point on the trust continuum, you have to continue to open yourself up for that
Mhm.
feedback, right? Right, wrong, or indifferent, even if you have to get yelled at because of somebody else's mistake, you're the front line, right? That's the plus and the minus of sales. So
Yep.
take take the yelling, but then also hopefully you get some gratitude on the flip side of that as well, right?
Absolutely, and there is and I know we've got some questions and comments here, so we may
Yeah,
wanna address them. But before we do, there there is an art to how to draw out feedback to get the truth and get
yeah,
what's useful. Sometimes it's super easy. There was a screw up, you got an angry customer, and you just gotta let them vent, talk it
yeah,
out, and then work through that situation.
yeah,
Not being defensive, you do it through questions and you arrive at a solution. 9 times out of 10 or 9.5 times out of 10, if you just let them vent, they're already gonna feel better.
yeah,
And you not getting defensive will make them feel better. And what I have found is a pissed off customer that you have won over has even there's like this catapult effect on the
yeah,
trust continuum. Like
yeah,
it had become an opportunity that would accelerate your trust. So in that instance, that's a that's a powerful mode. But
yeah,
in other cases, people don't want to provide negative feedback. So instead of framing it as negative, what I what I do with I set the frame of here's our standard. It is relentless excellence. We
Yeah.
never arrive. We always improve. With that in mind, what are ways that we can take this to the next level? So then
Yeah.
it becomes aspirational, but that aspirational defines the gap. So
Yeah.
then that client doesn't feel like they're being negative. So
Yeah.
there's an
That
art
is,
to it to get truth because we're all humans and sometimes we don't want to tell the truth when it's
yeah.
uncomfortable.
No, but I do love that of switching it to more aspirational, right? Because I do think that it does open people up. Because sometimes, yeah, maybe for whatever reason they just don't want to have the negative conversation.
Yeah.
They don't want to seem being negative, right? So you're really
Yeah,
just saying,
absolutely.
look, and sometimes even if there was like a little thing that you saw,
Yeah.
hey, this like lunch was late this day or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like I got to work on that, right? I get
Yep.
different caterer next time, right? And so I do think that like uh, almost giving them an example at times can help to like say, hey, here's even like the smallest amount, and then sometimes you just get that conversation rolling, and being open to it. To your point about
Yeah.
letting them not getting defensive, right?
Yeah.
Even if it was something silly, just say, okay, yeah, no, that thank you, appreciate that. We'll definitely like look into that, right? Take it and try to be very welcoming with it,
Yep.
and I've seen that with to your point about, upset customers and kind of getting catapulted above. Um, you know, keep in mind on the customer side of things, stuff rolls downhill too, right? So just
Yeah.
like as the salesperson, maybe you didn't make the mistake, somebody else did, but
Yep.
you're getting yelled at for it. Well, somebody's probably yelling at that, that owner, operator, whoever it is that you're working with,
Yep.
that homeowner, right? Maybe their husband or wife is yelling at them,
Yeah.
because the driveway isn't as clean as they wanted with the pressure washing. And
Yeah.
so, if that's the case, then yeah, let them vent. You know, hey, we'll do better next time, right? And I think having that, it's very few times you run into somebody that's just being negative to be negative, right? There's probably some truth. There's something that you could learn from it. So I think having that kind of continuous improvement, striving for excellence, that mindset is something that's huge. So, and yeah, so I thought couple of comments here. So,
Yeah.
your consistency is adding value, but
Mhm.
remember that it has to be their idea. And so I think that is a good point of like
Yeah.
trying to work with that customer and helping them see like
Yeah.
you know I always think about this as you're working to the next problem too. Is like you're trying to like understand, hey, I helped you solve this first problem.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see this next problem. Are you starting to see it, right? And
Yeah.
so now I'm starting to see, hey, have you noticed how like yeah, these leads come in, but now there's like this gap here. Let's
Yeah.
go fix that, right? And so I do think there is a level of, I also think of that as, hey, your customer has to want to solve the problem, right? They may identify the problem, but if they don't want to solve it, they don't have the budget to solve it, it's not going to get solved,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. There's not alignment there.
So, and then it looks like they used to run some units with a reserve put back, which
Yeah.
is definitely a good opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Especially, I think maybe if I'm reading that correctly, it says great sales position. So, maybe having some backup or some safety stock. We do that a lot, and it's
Yeah.
won us a lot of work, right? Because
Yeah.
customer calls us, hey man, so and so dropped the ball. Can you guys be out here tomorrow?
Yeah.
And we're always like, let me check. Like that's a fast turnaround for us.
Right.
But like because of the systems that we've built, it really has allowed us to have the inventory, have the service techs more times than not, right? Every now and then we have to say, okay, it's going to be a couple of days, but for the most part, yeah, we get there. So
Real quick on that.
yeah,
It is also a great sales position in terms of getting into an account that currently has an incumbent
yeah,
sale,
yeah,
service provider in there. I had an account when I was selling trucks or a prospective account at the time,
yeah,
and they were already being served by one of the large Chevy dealers there in Georgia. Called on them, said, "Hey, we're taken care of, you know, we're good to go with so and so.
Yeah.
Completely get it. Would you ever be open to having a relationship with a 911 provider
Yeah.
just in case they're not able to take care of you in that moment or don't have that stock?
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, actually, I would. Awesome. So then I would continue to cultivate that relationship. I would take them to lunch periodically on a quarterly basis.
Yep.
Hey, do you anticipate needing any quotes from us to explore whether we can save you some money? Long story short, about 18 months, I got my first order with the guy.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things that even though I never won over the full account, it was a nice living off the crumbs with the size of
Yeah.
this account that it was, and getting in the door simply as that emergency provider, and
Yeah.
we were it was one of those emergency moments that made it happen because we
Yeah.
had the vehicle or we had access to the vehicle to solve the problem soon enough. And had I not called on him,
Yeah.
that wouldn't have been possible. So,
No, and I love that. So a lot of times we've celebrated multiple times when we get
mhm,
like second or third in an RFP.
yep,
And the reason we still celebrate that, even though we didn't win it, is
yep,
for that exact purpose. So like
yep,
right place, right time,
yep,
like you get there by doing all of the work you did for those
yep,
18 months, right? I,
yep,
I still took them to lunch. I still, they knew my name, they knew what I could offer,
yep,
and I was very clear, like, hey guys, look, I get you're taken care of,
yep,
and being a service provider, if somebody tells me like, hey, I'm really happy with who I'm got, I'm not just out here shopping for the, a dollar off. I
yeah,
love that,
yeah,
hearing that, because that means if I do get in the door, if I do win the work, you're going to show me the same loyalty, right? And
yep,
so, like, there's a level of respect that I have for a customer that tells you that, right? And
yeah,
so then my thought is, okay, give me the crumbs, right? Give me the challenging
yeah,
problem. Let me try.
yeah,
If I fail at it and I don't win your work, well, I didn't have it to begin with,
no,
right? If I do this and I get in the door,
yeah,
it gives me that opportunity, right? And so I think, like, and when you're planning, obviously inventory costs money, headcount costs money.
yeah,
You know, a lot of times people talk about in business, your biggest challenge is always people, right? Because
mhm,
they're going to get sick, and kids are going to get sick, and all those kinds of things. But at the end of
yeah,
the day, having that bandwidth within your team, particularly if you're in a growth spurt, right? Like if I'm trying to grow, I've got to have the bandwidth. I
yeah,
worked for a company that said, go win it and then we'll build the team or the inventory.
yeah,
And it just doesn't work because the customer will tell you, hey, I'm ready to go tomorrow. And you're like, ah, can I have 6 months? And they're like, no, you can't. You said you were ready, And
yeah,
so I think that having that reserve, having that capacity, safety stock, whatever it is just so huge. It gives your sales teams confidence, and then sets you up for that example that you shared, where it's like, hey, I need something tomorrow, and you're like, all right, I got you. Let's go. You
yeah.
know?
A couple things here.
Yeah.
One, let's let's flip the scenario. So we talked about how to get in the door with being that 911 provider. What we all need to understand, any of us who run our own businesses or in sales, and we think we have these, imagine on the trust continuum, 8, 9, and
Hmm.
10 customers. Just know that if they are truly desirable accounts, there are going to be guys like David, there's going to be guys
Yep.
like me calling on these accounts. And you
Yep.
may think I've got these customers at such a high level of trust, they would never consider anybody else. Just know that there are folks like us that are going to call and be that 911 provider. And all we need is a crack in the door. And that
Yep.
is what you're competing against. That's why we talk about the trust continuum not being static, it is dynamic. And that is why you constantly build moats through interaction and
Yeah.
continued continued relationship building with these customers and understanding their needs so that you are not caught in a capacity issue where they
Yep.
have to look elsewhere. So keep keep that aspect completely in mind when you're talking about how you build these
Yeah.
relationships. Now the second point completely lost me. I completely forgot what that second point is, so probably hit me, but I
No.
wanted to make sure that we
Yeah.
got that across.
Well, and to, I guess, kind of keep going on that, right? The other
Yeah.
thing, and I've seen this a lot, is you have acquisitions, right? Or people leave companies, and this
Yes.
has helped and hurt. My work today, where we have a great relationship with somebody, they get a new opportunity, they go to a new company, and they bring us with them,
Mhm.
right?
Yes.
Um, awesome, that's great. We've also had it where, hey, somebody completely new that we weren't working with acquires a company, and they
Yep.
just approach the work so much differently
Yep.
that, it's like learning a whole new customer again, right? So we basically, just because of this acquisition, went from, a 9 or a 10 down to a 3 or a 4, right? And so now we're
Exactly
having
right.
to start all over. And it was purely just because somebody decided that they were going to sell,
Yes.
And so I think, for one, that's why it's important to have multiple relationships within a customer, I believe,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Definitely hammer in on the relationships of the folks that are the decision makers, and like your daily interaction, even if they're an
Yep.
influencer, but it's the person that's using your equipment every day, right? Or
Yep.
maybe it's the salesperson that the franchisee hires.
Yep.
How do you serve them just like you serve your customer? And then the other piece of it is, I mean, to me, that's why you want to have some prospects in the pipeline constantly, right? Because you
Yes.
never know when something's going to change. Someone's going to leave, someone's going to come in, and they're just going to want to do something completely differently, right? And when that happens, are you prepared to backfill that revenue, right? I started out with the one of the teams I took over. We had about
Mhm.
80 or 90% of our revenue coming from one customer, and it was good
Mhm.
at the time, but
Yeah.
like one of the first things I looked at was like, well, hey, this is
That's
not
a
good for my long-term
vulnerability.
perspective.
Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yep.
it's like, okay, who do I have on the team that can help me grow? What other customers can we go get? Who do I need to add
Yep.
so that we can go grow, right? And so, now it's a lot closer to, 50 or maybe 60% from one or two customers.
Yep.
But there's also a longer tail of customers that we can go tap, we can go grow, and we can work with, right? And so I think, like, it's one of those things that you want to, starting out, you're probably going to have one, maybe two customers, right? Because you don't
Yeah.
want to overcommit yourself.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, you want to start to build some diversity there, right? So that
Absolutely.
you're not so dependent on just one person, right?
I about 5 years ago, I had a situation where overnight I lost 30% of my revenue because of, lost that account, not of
Yeah,
anything that I could have done anything about, but it was such an eye opener that I committed to that point at that point, and I instill it in every founder and every rep that I work with is never think of your prospecting dial from 0 to 10, right?
yeah,
When you wanna ramp things up, you can put it as 7, 8, 9. You're able to dedicate a lot of that time. But in service businesses and sales, we're also serving the customers and doing some of that aspect that takes up bandwidth, and sometimes we have less and less time for
yeah,
prospecting and business development. What I committed to then and what I instill in everybody that I interact with is never let your prospecting dial go to 0, because that's what
yeah.
I did. I got complacent. Complacent's a nice word. I got overconfident
Okay.
that things will just continue organically. I didn't need to move any levers.
Yeah,
And today, I never let that happen. I can be completely busy, like just absolutely slammed, and I will keep things going. In fact, I recently hired an executive assistant because my time ban I was nearing that
Yeah.
at 2-1 going, I cannot
Yeah.
let this happen. I hired an executive assistant to support me in that realm so I would
Yeah.
never go to 0. So whatever you do, don't go to 0. And
Yeah.
then secondly, I remembered that second point that I was gonna bring up. So
Yeah.
I had alluded to the 4 farmland matrix,
Yeah.
and what it is you got 4 types of farmland. One is that new desirable farmland that you have yet to acquire, right? You're
Yeah.
looking at and going, "These are new accounts we should be going after." These are the ones that we go, "Hey, would you be open to a 911 account?" Like, you
Yeah.
get in, and
Exactly.
then you start taking on more and more. The second is underdeveloped farmland, meaning these are accounts that you have, but you've only worked one section of it. So
Yeah.
let's say in commercial HVAC, you might have, okay, we're doing repairs or retrofit type
Yeah.
work, but we really need the base of a preventive maintenance contract here. And
Yeah.
then you have other aspects that you can add to that account. So underdeveloped, you're looking at, okay, what can we do to develop this? And then the third is neglected farmland. And this is what triggers, you know what? We need to hire more account managers. We need to hire
Yeah.
more sales reps because we have these clients and they could be increasing yield, but we don't have the workers there to really work that account. And so that's the
Yeah.
trigger to go, we need to expand our sales team. And then
Yeah.
the fourth is the lost farmland. So it gets, the property gets sold. You get a new property manager in there, and they're like, "Look, we got our own folks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, appreciate you, but you're gone." But it is a great property, right? It would
Yeah.
still be a great account. Well, that's one that you can either re-engage or what one of my clients calls the hang around theory, meaning
Yeah.
you hang around until someone messes up
Yeah.
and then you get back in.
Yeah.
So that is because sometimes when you go in, there'll still be people there going, "Hey, you know what? But this company did really well for us."
Yeah.
And you just hang around long enough until you get back in. Though that 4 farmland matrix is what gives you a framework for how you're thinking about your clients to protect yourself against us
Yeah.
being the
Yeah. Somebody.
911 provider,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well,
So,
and like to your point on the hanging around, right? Like I joke a lot, or like I'll put in kind of quotations and when I'm talking about right place and right time because I look at a lot of the accounts where we've been in the right place at the right time. We were
yeah.
hanging around, right?
Yep,
We had lost the work. We were second.
yep,
We were always second or third. Maybe we had moved from third to second. Like we weren't didn't have like the top spot,
yep.
but that was okay. And in some cases, you don't want the top spot,
Mhm.
right? Maybe,
Yeah,
but in others, you just got to get your foot in the door, right? You mentioned
sure.
earlier finding that crack. It's like, hey, I'll be your 911 provider,
Yep,
but then I'm going to continue to service you. I'm going to continue to show up
yep,
and say, hey, how did this go? Right. And I
yep,
think, there's everybody has struggles, right?
yep,
Whether that's inventory or people, maybe your competitor has somebody leave, right?
yep,
Or that property management company has somebody leave, right?
yep,
And so now, to your point, I've still got some advocates in there. And I think that's one of the reasons if you look at like partner selling or stakeholder selling, where you're trying to build advocates within a company
yeah,
where that can go talk for you when you're not there, right? They can say, "Oh, hey, we had Sean and team in here before, and they did great work for us. We made a decision to go away from them.
yeah,
Okay, it's not working out the way we had hoped, so let's go back and maybe re-engage there, right?" And it's somebody that
yep,
can just kind of plant those seeds for you in a way. And I think it's a way to just stay in mind, right? To be aware of, or for them to be aware of you,
absolutely.
for you to again kind of hang around and like you and then something's going to fall the tree and you pick it up and help
Yep.
them out, and now you're back in the door, right? And I think
Yep.
that's a big part of that engagement and that improvement side is like how do you continue to just stay relevant, continue
Yep.
talking to that customer, to help them out there, right?
You you triggered a thought on the stakeholder management. It is so important that as you deal with these sort of larger environments where you have multiple stakeholders
Hmm.
involved, maybe maybe there's one primary decision maker, but there are these other folks that have input.
Yeah.
Even beyond that, like, one of the core things that we've instituted in our company when it comes to onboarding, and then I've been training and coaching some of the teams that we work with, is when you're onboarding a new customer, get an introduction to their AP contact.
Yeah. Yeah.
That way you're not having to hound your primary customer on following up on invoices and things like that.
Yeah.
Plus, you're able to develop a relationship with that AP contact. I have I have learned that with every company that I get into, I try to establish relationship no matter what their role is.
Yeah.
If they're the assistant, if they're the accountant, if they were whatever they are,
Yeah.
I build the relationship. It not only helps with the sale and then helps with continuing the relationship, but you can also, if you're having trouble getting in touch with somebody, maybe your primary contact or decision maker, you
Yeah.
can then get intelligence on the
Yeah.
ground or have
Yeah.
them help you get connected. So having multiple nodes within that micro network within the company is
Yeah.
a powerful way of continuing that account and that relationship and protecting against the outside forces that might come in.
No, and that's a great point, because uh, I've seen that be successful,
Yep.
within customers, because you learn how they like to receive invoices, or is there some special coding that they need, and
Yes.
like
Yes.
if I can make your job a little bit easier, even on that side of things, like
Mhm.
I don't really want to deal with invoicing and invoicing software and all those kinds of things, but at the end of the day, it's another way to make that customer a little bit better, right?
Yep.
And to your point, it builds a little bit more trust. You can get a little bit more insight,
Yep.
on, hey, what's important to the accounting team from a goals
Yep.
perspective, right?
Yep.
If we're not getting paid on time, is there something we're doing that's causing that? And then in most cases, I'm like, sure, some folks like to wait up till the very last day of their payment terms, right? They're going to pay you on day 30 or 31 of
Sure.
that 30 terms. But I, more often than not, the folks that I work with, they're like, man, you did the work for us. We want to pay you, right?
Yep.
This is just our process, right? So, okay,
Yep.
let me understand that process. And now I've got another advocate inside that says, man, working with Sean and team, it's super easy, right?
Yep. Yep.
There's this other like company we tried one time, and it was just they invoiced us 30 days later, and then they were yelling at us about how fast could we pay them, and
You
so
get
it's
that
like,
lean letter, and then it's like,
yeah.
"What wait a minute, you escalated this?" And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, so no, I think that's a really good point of like, as you talk about stakeholders, think even outside of your direct scope of control.
Mhm.
I think, and getting some FaceTime with them is huge. We always
Yeah.
joke with new reps of like, if you go talk to the guy in the field, he's going to yell at you less when there is a problem.
Yep.
And it's just so true because you put a face with the name,
Yep.
if
Yep.
you took the effort to drive out there, yeah, maybe it's 3 or 4 hours of your day, but now you've extended that branch, right? Maybe you gave them a hat, maybe you brought them some lunch. All of those kinds of things just builds a little bit more rapport, moves you up that trust, continuum, right? And
Exactly.
just makes it a little bit easier for them to know, hey, when I call, you're going to answer and you're going to help me, do my job. And so even if there is an issue, I know you're going to make it right. So I'm not going to yell at you as much as maybe I would have,
Yeah.
in the normal situation here. So, um,
Absolutely.
awesome. I know. I know we're coming up on time. I know you got a commitment, so just
Yeah.
curious, is there any final thoughts? If there are any other questions in the chat, please drop them in. But Sean, any final thoughts from your side?
Not a ton. We covered
Yeah,
a wide range. I think if we were to sum up what we've been talking about is the idea of trust is not static, it's
yeah,
dynamic. But trust is the key not only for you to land the business, but to keep it and then multiply it, whether it's
yeah,
through repeat business, retainers, or through referrals.
yep,
And you got to be vigilant on how you build that trust
yeah.
because there are going to be people like David and me who are looking for nice pieces of farmland that
There,
someone else is already working and we want to take it.
yeah.
So don't let us take it.
There you go. Yeah, no, I love the trust, is not static, right?
Yeah.
I think so often, particularly in sales, right? So much gets put on the close.
Yep.
And for so many businesses, and particularly if there's any level of service involved in your business, you have to stay engaged with that client, and you have to continue to try to move that trust forward. Even if you're at a 10, right? You're trying to maintain that.
Yep. Yep.
And to your point, when you stop doing that and you leave a little bit of a gap there, somebody will come in and try to take it from
They
you,
will.
right? So it happens all the time. So, well, Sean, I appreciate it again. We'll have to do
Absolutely,
another
Kevin.
one. Maybe next time we can talk a little bit about now that we've got this good trust, how do we turn it into some more revenue? So we'll have to get
Awesome.
another one on the books. But I appreciate your
Sounds great.
time.
You too, David.
Appreciate appreciate
Thank
everybody
you so
joining
much.
us today, and have a great rest of your day.